Well, here we are, only a month or so later, and I've already gone and rewritten Birthright as well. I originally planned to release this in January, but in the true spirit of Fire Emblem Fates, I'll release Birthright and Conquest side by side, and then I'll make you all wait another month and a half for Revelations. Firstly, I'd like to mention that I will be using the same criteria as the last video, which will be up on screen. Additionally, if you haven't watched that Conquest rewrite already, I highly recommend you watch it before going into this one, as there are some plot threads that might not make sense unless you've watched that one. Additionally, I will be skimming briefly over the first 7 chapters and the Lore of Fates because, of course, my Conquest video already covered that in depth. However, I will go over them again just very quickly to help jog your memory. Now, Birthright is, well, rather bland. So it looks like I will have to do more than make a few minor changes to the story this time. So, without any further ado, here is the second part of my Fire Emblem Fates rewrite. As with Conquest, we start with the lore of the continent of Lukvia. The dragon and Ankos burst out of the bottomless canyon, so the Dawn Dragon and the Dusk Dragon sent 4 champions to accompany the hero Vala and fight in Ankos. The Dusk Dragon's champions founded Nor, and the Dawn Dragon's champions founded Hoshido, with the hero Vala forging crowns out of Ankos' scales and giving each crown to the rulers of the kingdoms, before he disappeared into the bottomless canyon, never to be seen again. The first 7 chapters follow Corrin as he fights his way to join Xander's battalion in Chapter 1, fights Hashidan prisoners under Iago's command in Chapter 2, and goes to the bottomless canyon in Chapter 3, and skips Chapter 4 because Chapter 4 is dumb. In Chapter 5, Mikoto survives and Iago is revealed to have murdered Sumeragi and kidnapped Corrin as a way to gain King Yaren's favor. Then, at the pivotal moment, Corrin chooses to side with Hoshido. As his Norin siblings call him a traitor, Hinoka swoops in to extract Corrin off the battlefield as Xander and Ryoma fight each other. Once the Hoshidans return to the capital, Ryoma assumes role as the acting dynast while his mother remains under intensive care. Ryoma, then eager to get Corrin out of this incredibly toxic environment, sends him to the northern fortress of Hoshido to meet Sakura, where the Hoshidans are pursuing the Norian army. Here, Sakura meets up with Corrin, and just as the raiding party returns with some Norian prisoners, namely Silas and Felicia, Corrin manages to persuade the Hoshidans to allow them into their ranks. This causes Saizo, leader of the Hoshidan raiding party, to grow suspicious of Corrin. Not too fast afterwards, the fortress is beset by Norians. This acts as our Chapter 8. Afterwards, Corrin and company begin to push south in pursuit of the Norian army. After a few battles, the beginning of Chapter 11 happens, and Corrin and company arrive in a deserted battlefield north of the Wind Tribe's settlement. Here, Corrin strolls amongst the devastation. Sakura then makes an offhand remark about how this is most certainly the work of Ryoma's company. Corrin then finds a dead Norian soldier and stops dead in his tracks. He looks at the dead Norian and begins having a flashback, realizing that this man was one of Gunter's knights. He had a wife and children. As such, the player then begins to feel sympathetic towards the Norians. Azura, who quietly stowed away with the group at the North Fortress, reveals herself and delivers a touching piece about death and acceptance, remarking that her parents' caravan was ransacked by Mokushijins, because, in my version, Azura is a gypsy. The group is then halted by a group of red hounds. Corrin, who is anxious for revenge, goes at them, and Azura and Sakura both call him out on it, but Corrin ignores them and attacks anyways, leaving Corrin's unit, now joined by Jacob, left to clean up the mess. In Chapter 12, we see Leo, who has just made a deal with the Wind Tribe to have them support Nor. Shortly afterwards, Snoka arrives, trying to do the same thing only for Hoshido. Leo then orders the Wind Tribe against her, but not before remarking that she looks a lot like a woman his brother mentioned, but never minds, because she is of no importance. This is war, and everyone is disposable to an extent. Corrin then arrives. The Wind Tribe welcomes him at first, but then snaps as Sakura brings up Hinoka. Afterwards, a fight breaks out, and Hinoka gets freed, much to her own anguish because she believes she could have handled the situation herself. Anyways, after a tough fight, they all regroup, and Hinoka remarks that their only options are either to return to the Hoshidan capital or push forwards, as she delivers the grave news that Takumi's forces in the north were defeated and Ryoma's company has gone completely dark. Not looking good for the Hoshidans, we flash back to the capital, where an injured Takumi barrels into the throne room. Yukimura puts the young archer in his place, and Takumi fucks off. He strolls throughout the castle and encounters his mother walking the castle halls as well. Takumi then goes into an outburst, trying to make sense of why she's out of bed, but Makoto, implied to be high on her medicine, continues on, as Takumi follows her. He finds himself in the study, where Makoto passes out. Takumi, as he waits for help, pokes around and finds a locked box. Inside, the crown of Hoshido, forged from a scale of Inankos. Takumi takes it for himself. Under the cover of night, Takumi and his retainers flee the castle. Oboro voices a strong opinion in favor, anxious to go back out and fire the Norians. Heading out into the streets, they are stopped in their tracks by Saizo, Kaze, and a group of ninjas. Oboro then retrades her decision, scolding Takumi for acting so stupid. Kaze then strikes a deal, saying if they can defeat them, they'll let Takumi go. This acts as our chapter 14. Takumi wins, of course, and with Kaze and Saizo now on board with them, they make for Mokushiju. Korin and company have arrived in Mokushu, and here they can either break back to the capital via the North Road, or take a ship to Shiv, making it a perfect rest stop for them. Here they meet Kitaro, his daughter Kagero, and their head diviner Orochi. Kagero and Orochi seem friendly enough, but later on we see Kitaro meet with Iago, Duke of Shiv. Kagero overhears this and warns Korin. They battle Kitaro and then meet up with Takumi's group. The group, with Kagero and Orochi in tow, start off to Shiv, but they are stopped by a sorcerer. The sorcerer names himself the apprentice of the Rainbow Sage, and reveals the Yato Blade, sword of the hero Vala himself. He offers it a gift, as his master had a vision of a descendant of his brother among the very group that stands before him. Azura, unknowing of her own heritage, as the descendant is later revealed to be her, brings up how one of the previous Hoshidan queens was a possible descendant of one of Vala's children, and thus any one of the Hoshidan siblings could be worthy to wield the blade. Korin, of course, offers to receive it. With new resolve in hand, the group decides to embark to Nor and find Ryoma. After the Rainbow Sage apprentice remarks about how there's a rebellion in Shiv, the group head out to sea, where they are ambushed by red hounds after crossing into Norian waters. In Chapter 16, we reach the port of Nestra, and as the group stalk the streets under cover of darkness, they pass by a bakery, and Hinoka goes pale and dead quiet. Korin concerns, asks her what's wrong, and Hinoka responds with, "I watched our father die, and the Norians kidnapped you. I watched it all from that shop window." She bursts into tears. Takumi sighs and tries to explain, but Hinoka, calmed down, explains it for herself. Here we get a flashback cutscene, and we are treated to a young Xander, his mother and his father attending the opera for a show. Xander is then tasked by his mother to go find a place to sit, so he leaves and runs to a young red-headed girl, Hinoka. Realizing her as a Hoshidan, Xander covers and reveals himself as Marks, claiming that is his name. Hinoka doesn't give her own name, but the two exchange some relatively cute and wholesome dialogue before parting ways. After the performance, Xander, avoiding his parents, goes out looking for the girl, and runs into Yago, who shares some ominous dialogue. Xander eventually does find Hinoka, and the two of them share a cute moment exchanging mailing addresses and coming up with excuses as to why their addresses are the castles of each kingdom. The conversation is halted when a bunch of Red Hound soldiers start coming down the street. Xander takes charge, urging Hinoka to run and hide, but Hinoka remembers she was separated from her brother and father. Xander asks her brother's name, to which Hinoka responds with Korin, and after promising to protect her brother with his life, Xander tells her to run and hide, and the scene where Iago kills Sumeragi and captures Korin is played again, only from Hinoka's perspective out of the shop window. Afterwards, Xander, screaming Korin's name, finds his mother, father, and Iago. Iago is handing Korin over to them. Xander then speaks with young Korin, saying that he made a promise to someone very special that Korin would be protected with Xander's own life. Flash back to the present. Korin then says that this Marks fellow must be a high-ranking officer in Xander's battalion by now. Korin, ashamed of this, vows to find Marks and offers his thanks. But just as they all share a moment, a gypsy troupe who recognizes Azura pulls them over and offers them passage to Inner Shiv with their caravan. The group obliges, but there is a catch. The group is short one performer and needs Azura to cover for them, because they are about to perform for King Garen. Takumi sees this as a golden opportunity to clash with the king and spearheads the event, against Korin's wishes, although more of the group sides with Takumi, leaving Korin angered and alone. The plan, of course, ends up with Azura performing and everything going horribly wrong. But, unbeknownst to the group, the two crowns, being in such close proximity, have awoken each other, causing Garen to start slipping. After the show, Korin urges Hinoka to send a letter to Marks, in which she does, Eventually she does get a response, who says that it'll have someone waiting in Sheev to pick them up. The group then reach the capital of Sheev, in which they are confronted by the rebels. A bright-eyed Sakura notices that some of the rebels look very Hoshidan, and the group is then brought before Ryoma and Scarlet, who have been running the rebels for the past several weeks. And before you ask, yes, they have a support in my version. As they go to meet Marcus's contact, the group is approached by Camilla of all people, who in tandem with the Normian army fight the unprepared rebels and the Hoshidans, who then flee into the nearby forest, where they are confronted by Leo. Leo's chapter is mostly the same, only instead of faceless, he uses a lot of adventurers. Afterwards, Leo talks with Azura, and after seeing Takumi with the Hoshidan crown, he quietly disappears. Hinoka continues to write letters to Marx, who tries his damnedest to guide the Hoshidans into the Norian capital. On their way, they pass Mount Garu and the Ice Tribe, where Flora, attempting to give them a clean getaway from the Red Hounds, gets stuck in a burning building and dies. They then continue on to Windmire, where they bump into Elise, who's in a makeshift hospital healing Norian soldiers. Elise wishes to hopefully find a peaceful ending and helps the group through the source system, where Camilla, out looking for Elise, has a one-on-one duel with Corrin. And after her defeat, Corrin allows Camilla to join the group and help defeat King Garen and end the war. Camilla, opposed, eventually gives in and agrees. The group continues to lay siege to Castle Krakenberg, fighting Hans, Ryoma getting revenge on Iago for killing his father, and Sakura having a moment in power in convincing the bandit, Shura, to join them by screaming at him. As the group camp out in the courtyard, someone approaches them, who turns out to be a disguised Yukimura, bringing news of Mikoto's recent death from her wounds becoming infected. It hits the group hard, but Takumi manages to rally their morale back before himself collapsing from the power of the crown he is carrying. Elise convinces the group to get to the castle's apothecary, but on the way they are stopped by Xander. Xander sends his retainers to go fetch Takumi his medicine, and turns around, ashamed, seeing both Elise and Camilla have abandoned him. Xander then approaches Elise, trying to remind her that everything will be alright, but Hinoka stops him, realizing who Xander is the second they block each other's strike and begin to fight. Elise rushes in, with Corrin yelling back at her like a madman. She gets cut down by Xander's sword, and the paladin remains a broken man. Corrin and Hinoka remain to knock some sense into him, while the group forges on for a path to the apothecary. When questioned of his loyalty to the king, Xander responds by saying, "My father died on the night Azura performed, leaving behind a demon in an empty shell. I only seek to see that none raid his grave." Xander is defeated, and him and Hinoka reminisce about every letter they've sent, and Xander dies with his sword in one arm and his sister in the other. But with no time to grieve, Leo, along with the Rainbow Sage, enter the castle and clean up the mess, and reveal that Takumi's illness and Garen's possession are a result of the crowns. And now that the two of them have been brought so close together, it could mean the revival of a Nankos. The sage then reveals Azura's heritage to her, and she bestows the Yato to Corrin, as per the directions of the Rainbow Sage, allowing it to accept Corrin as its true wielder and become the Light Yato. Using Leo's magic and Azura's song, the group helped defeat King Garen's body, turned into an abomination by the crowns, and in the Great Hall of Nor, Ryoma makes peace with the new king of Nor, Leo. As Hinoka and the Sky Brigade fly into the capital of Hoshido on the first day after the war's official end, a new statue has been erected in central Hoshido. One depicting the first king of Nor, the Paladin, and Hoshido's first Dynast, the Sword Mistress, shaking hands in honor of a new age of unity between the two kingdoms. Ryoma reaches a hand out to Corrin, shakes it, and then turns to the people, where he delivers his inauguration as the new Dynast, hopefully to bring a new age of peace and rebuild to Hoshido. Well, I hope you enjoyed the rewrite of Birthright. It has been a long time in the making, and I certainly had a lot of fun making it. So, with that being said, I will see you next month for the third installment of Fixing Fates, where we finally tackle the worst story in all of Fates' chronology, Revelations.